Hello, my name is Andrew John Charles, and today I'll be reading A Song for the Unsung, Bayard Rustin, the man behind the 1963 March on Washington, by Carol Boston Weatherford and Rob Sanders, illustrated by Byron McCrae. A Song for the Unsung. What Bayard Rustin saw on the morning of August 28, 1963, was not what he expected. Quiet stillness echoed off the Washington Monument. The steady beat of Bayard's footsteps mingled with the voices of security guards, reporters, and a handful of others. Where were the crowds of protesters he had worked so hard to bring to Washington, D.C.? For 8 weeks, he'd been orchestrating the protest, hoping to bring 100,000 to the nation's capital. The moment had almost arrived for the March on Washington for jobs and freedom. Where were the protesters? Bayard had faith the crowds would arrive. Sing, My Lord, what a morning, as the sun rises over the nation's capital. Sing, Pray on, to call in the hopes of the ancestors. Born in Westchester, Pennsylvania in 1912, Bayard had the faith of his grandmother, Julia Davis Rustin. She taught young Bayard her Quaker values. Early on, he learned the church's teachings, including a belief in nonviolence. Bayard was also learning about the injustices that African Americans faced. Julia supported the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Bayard gave up his bed when well-known NAACP members stayed overnight in the Rustin home. He heard the grown-ups talking late into the night about the civil rights struggle. Sing, Nobody knows the trouble I've seen under the burden of racism. Sing, Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Negro National Anthem, to draw on the strength of those freedom fighters. By the time he went to college, Bayard had developed firm beliefs and a mighty singing voice. On tour with a quartet, he performed spirituals, work songs, and the blues. His vibrant tenor tones brought listeners to tears. A reporter spotted Bayard. He asked the question Bayard must have been thinking. Where are the crowds? Bayard pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, examined it, then replied, Everything is right on schedule. What the reporter didn't know was that the paper was blank. Perhaps Bayard's hopes were as empty as a sheet of paper. Sing, Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, to the doubters. As a young man, Bayard's feelings about justice, peace, and nonviolence grew stronger and stronger, and he put his feelings about equality and pacifism into action. Sing, Every time I feel the spirit to keep the faith. When he refused to give up his seat on a bus, Bayard was beaten and arrested. He did not fight back. Sing, Traveling shoes to take a stand by sitting down. When he refused to fight in World War II or to support the war, Bayard was sent to prison for more than 2 years. Behind bars, he spoke up for equality, working to integrate the prison so black and white prisoners were treated equally. Sing, Down by the Riverside, to advocate for peace. Sing, The Gospel Train, along the first ever Freedom Ride. Once out of prison, Bayard joined another protest against segregated buses. Again, he was arrested. This time, he was sentenced to a chain gang. But the harsh treatment did not change Bayard's commitment to civil rights and his dedication to peaceful protest. Sing, I'm going to sit at the welcome table to demand service. When Bayard staged a one-man sit-in at a whites-only lunch counter, he was again arrested, but jail time didn't stop him from fighting for what he knew was right. As a young black gay man, Bayard Rustin was also learning about another kind of inequality and injustice. Back then, men who loved men and women who loved women could not socialize together. Doing so could get you arrested. Bayard knew that firsthand, and revealing that you were gay could mean losing your job, your friends, or even your family. Bayard's family stood by him, but being gay threatened his civil rights mission. Some African American leaders didn't want to work with him. Some white lawmakers tried to shame him. Still, Bayard kept on fighting for equality, and he did so while being nonviolent. Sing, I've been buked, when society frowns on who you are. Sing, when I've done the best I can, when the hour has come. Under the leadership of A. Philip Randolph, and with the help of a small staff, Bayard worked long hours to make sure every last detail of the march is planned. Letters were written, calls were made, money raised. Posters, banners, and buttons were created. Buses, carpools, trains, and planes were scheduled. Maps were drawn. Volunteers were in place. Speakers and singers were enlisted. All the preparations for the March on Washington were complete. Security guards, portable restrooms, first aid stations, drinking water. Even 80,000 boxed lunches had been prepared. Of course, the best preparations in the world could not guarantee that the march would be peaceful. Bayard knew that peaceful protest was often met with violence. Years earlier, Bayard had traveled to India to learn about nonviolent protests from the followers of Mahatma Gandhi. Bayard put what he learned into practice. He protested injustice around the world and back home in the United States. After Rosa Parks was arrested for not giving up her bus seat to a white man, Bayard went to Montgomery, Alabama. There, he introduced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the power of peaceful protest. When Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycott, nonviolence was at the center. From then on, the civil rights movement would preach and practice peaceful protest. Sing, I've got peace like a river, to commit to nonviolent resistance. Sing, when the saints go marching in, as thousands from across the nation arrive at the National Mall. By 9 o'clock a.m. on August 28, 1963, 40,000 people gathered at the Washington Monument. By 10:30, the number had grown to 90,000. Bayard's work was paying off, and people kept coming. They came by car and train, on planes and buses, and even on foot. More people kept arriving until 250,000 stood beneath the blazing summer sun. Led by Dr. King, the march began around noon. With him walked men and women, young and old, black and white, rich and poor. They walked side by side, hand in hand, row by row. Some carried their children, some carried signs. End segregation rules. Voting rights now. Let us rise together and be one free people. One row behind Dr. King marched Bayard Rustin, a gay black man, the man responsible for orchestrating the march. Sing, walk together, children, as protesters march along the mile-long route. Bayard was used to not being in the spotlight. His name had been left off important reports he had co-authored. He had been a trusted advisor to Dr. King and then had been let go. Some would have nothing to do with Bayard. After all, they must have thought, what does a gay man have to offer us or our cause? But when A. Philip Randolph was put in charge of the March on Washington, he knew immediately the man he wanted as his deputy, Bayard Rustin. Sing, this little light of mine, from behind the scenes. Bayard did not have time to think about any of that as the crowd of marchers arrived at the Lincoln Memorial and spilled out onto the mall. Bare feet dangled in the reflecting pool. People munched on box lunches. Sing, if I had a hammer, to tear down walls that divide us. Sing, we shall overcome, hand in hand, as folk singer Joan Baez leads the chorus of voices. Sing, when the Spirit says sing. Bayard had carefully composed the program for the March on Washington. Each song, each speaker. The speakers inspired, the singers performed. The crowd listened and cheered, clapped and chanted. Music had always been at the center of Bayard's life. Songs from church, songs sung with the college quartet, songs he wrote, sang, and recorded, prison songs and chain gang songs, the songs of the countries he visited, the songs of the people he met, songs of peace, songs of protest. Sing and clap as gospel great Mahalia Jackson belts out How I Got Over. The day built to a crescendo as the final speaker, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., came before the crowd. Bayard knew that Dr. King was the perfect speaker to end the program. But the speech that Dr. King gave was even more powerful than Bayard had hoped it would be. The speech had a high note with the rousing refrain, I have a dream. During the speech, Bayard stood in the background as he had done so many times before. He listened. He nodded. In front of him stood a mosaic of Americans, most of whom did not know his name, or his role in bringing them together on that historic day. Sing, he's got the whole world in his hands, as opera star Marianne Anderson blesses the crowd with her rich contralto. After the applause for Dr. King died down, Bayard stepped from the background and up to the podium. He faced the crowd and spoke into the microphone. "Friends," he said, "at 5 o'clock today, the leaders whom you have heard will go to President Kennedy to carry the demands of this revolution. It is now time for you to act." One by one, Bayard read the demands of the march. Again and again, the crowd cheered, "Yes!" The 250,000 marchers left that day committed to work, vote, and protest non-violently for civil rights. Thousands of reporters, photographers, and other members of the media shared the story of the peaceful march with America and the world. The monumental march led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That law ended segregation in public spaces and banned employment discrimination. A quiet man orchestrated it all. A man behind a movement. An unsung hero. A gay African-American. Bayard Rustin. Finally, a song for you. Sing, "Ain't That Good News?" when day is finally done.